What if I told you that America was once home to a cigar empire so massive it produced millions of cigars every single day? Its factories stretched across entire city blocks. Its owners became some of the richest men in America. Its cigars were smoked by presidents, businessmen, and celebrities alike. But today, this empire is almost forgotten. What happened? How did the largest cigar company in America rise to unimaginable heights, only to collapse into history? Tonight, we're uncovering the rise, the glory, and the downfall of America's greatest cigar empire. Welcome to the Forgotten Cigars. In the final decades of the 19th century, cigars were woven into the fabric of American life. In city boardrooms and corner saloons, a cigar was more than a habit. It was a sign of respectability, of arrival. The scent drifted through banks, hotels, and bustling train stations, a quiet signal that business was being done. Nowhere did this culture take root more deeply than in the new cigar capitals, Tampa and New York. Here, entire neighborhoods pulsed with the rhythms of the trade. Immigrants from Cuba, Spain, and Italy arrived by the thousands, bringing with them the skills and traditions of cigar making. In Tampa, Vicente Martinez Ybor carved out a city from Florida swampland, building Ybor City as a haven for workers and their families. Hand-rolled cigars became the lifeblood of these communities, supporting mutual aid societies, social clubs, and a vibrant street life. Sanborn maps from the era reveal blocks packed with brick factories, their smokestacks looming over rows of shotgun houses and corner stores. In New York's Lower East Side, the story played out in tenements and crowded workshops, where Eastern European immigrants rolled cigars by hand, each one a ticket to a better life. The demand was insatiable. In offices, on streetcars, in the parlors of the rising middle class, the cigar was a badge of status, a prop for deal-making and display. Long before the rise of any industrial giant, America's love affair with the cigar had already set the stage for something even bigger, a market hungry for scale and a workforce ready to build it. In 1901, the American Cigar Company was born out of a single, audacious idea. What if one company could control every cigar that filled the nation's shops, parlors, and pockets? James B. Duke, already a legend in the world of tobacco, set out to do just that. He saw a market bursting with demand but fractured by small, independent makers. Duke's answer was consolidation on a scale America had never seen. With the backing of New York financiers and the muscle of the American Tobacco Company, he gathered up dozens of factories, each with its own history, each with its own workforce, and folded them into a single, coordinated machine. The company's reach stretched from the humid streets of Tampa's Ybor City to the crowded blocks of New York. In Tampa, the El Reloj factory, a massive brick fortress crowned by its iconic clock tower, dominated the skyline. Sanborn maps from the era show entire city blocks claimed for the rolling, drying, and boxing of cigars. In New York's Cigar Row, the company's 4-story plant ran nearly around the clock, its windows glowing late into the night. At its peak, the American Cigar Company produced close to 1 million cigars every single day, an output so vast that trade journals called it the largest cigar manufacturer in the country. Inside these sprawling plants, thousands of workers, many of them recent immigrants, rolled, sorted, and packed cigars in a blur of motion. Skilled rollers commanded the galeras, the long tables where tobacco became artistry. Mechanization crept in too. Patented machines bunched filler leaves at speeds no human hand could match, and central humidification systems kept the precious tobacco supple, no matter the season. The company's labor force swelled to over 12,000, each person a cog in Duke's industrial vision. This was not just a business, it was an empire, built on the promise of turning an everyday luxury into a national habit. The American Cigar Company did not just sell cigars, it sold a vision of American refinement. At the height of its power in the early 1900s, every detail of its product was crafted to signal prestige. The company's labels, printed with gold-embossed script and a proud eagle, turned each box into a miniature work of art. Newspaper ads swept across the country, promising not just a smoke, but an experience reserved for those who aspired to something greater. One full-page ad in the New York Times called it the luxury hand-rolled cigar made entirely in the United States, while another in the Tampa Tribune boasted of endorsements from the likes of President McKinley and J.P. Morgan. Owning an American cigar became a quiet badge of status, set on parlor tables, shared in campaign rooms, and used as gifts in backroom deals. The packaging itself, with its heavy paper and domestic inks, was designed to impress before a match was ever struck. Trade journals praised the brand's refined flavor and all-American pedigree, reinforcing the notion that to smoke an American was to join a club of taste and power. In that gilded moment, the empire looked unshakable, a fixture in the rituals of ambition and success. The first real tremor beneath the empire came from a slender, paper-wrapped rival. Cigarettes, once seen as a passing fad, began to sweep through America's cities with a speed and efficiency that hand-rolled cigars could never match. Machines in Durham and Richmond spat out cigarettes at hundreds per minute, far outpacing even the most skilled cigar roller. The economics were brutal. A cigarette could be produced for a fraction of the cost, boxed by the dozen, and sold for pennies. Trade journals from the 1910s tracked the numbers with growing alarm. By 1920, cigarettes had captured nearly half the national tobacco market, edging out the cigar's once unquestioned reign. Younger buyers, drawn to the quick hit and easy portability, turned away from the rituals of cigar smoking. The American Cigar Company scrambled to respond, experimenting with shorter, lighter cigars and even launching a mini line meant to mimic the cigarette's convenience. But the tide was moving fast. In the boardrooms, executives could sense the ground shifting beneath them, not from a rival mogul or a labor uprising, but from a technological revolution that made the old ways look slow and expensive. The empire's first true threat was not personal, but mechanical, a quiet, relentless advance that would not be stopped by tradition or prestige. World War I struck at the very roots of the cigar empire. The US naval blockade of the Caribbean cut off shipments of Cuban tobacco, sending the price of premium leaf soaring from 12 to 21 cents a pound. Factory ledgers from 1917 show the American Cigar Company scrambling to secure substitutes, Dominican and Honduran leaves, then Pennsylvania and Connecticut crops, each blend a compromise forced by the shifting tides of war. Even after the armistice, recovery proved fragile. The Great Depression and a new embargo on Cuban goods in 1932 sealed off the old supply lines for good. World War II brought a second wave of disruption. Materials grew scarce, skilled laborers left for the military, and production lines slowed to a crawl. For a product built on ritual and refinement, these shortages dulled the cigar's shine. Meanwhile, a different threat gathered strength. Local ordinances began banning smoking in schools and public spaces. In 1916, the Florida Supreme Court upheld Tampa's ban, setting a precedent that would echo for decades. Then, in 1964, the Surgeon General's report changed the national conversation forever, linking tobacco use to serious health risks. Suddenly, the old language of luxury and status sounded hollow. New advertising restrictions stripped away the gold leaf promises that had once adorned every box. The cigar, once a badge of American ambition, found itself on the wrong side of culture and regulation, its place in daily life growing fainter with each passing year. The empire that once seemed invincible began to unravel, not with a single blow, but with a series of slow, grinding losses. In 1911, the Supreme Court's antitrust ruling shattered the American Tobacco Trust, forcing the American Cigar Company to break apart and sell off its factories. The great machine that had stretched from Tampa to New York was suddenly scattered, its power diluted overnight. In New York, the four-story plant that once pulsed with life fell silent in 1935. The brick facade, once the pride of Cigar Row, was left to gather dust. Tampa's El Reloj, the clock tower that had ruled the skyline and kept time for thousands, closed its doors in 1952. That single closure erased 1,300 jobs, fathers, mothers, sons and daughters all swept out in a wave of pink slips. The neighborhoods built around the factories, with corner stores, mutual aid halls, and the hum of daily life, began to empty. Where once the air was thick with the scent of tobacco and the sound of rolling tables, now there was only quiet. The cigar districts faded from the maps and from memory, their stories left behind in old payroll ledgers and yellowed photographs, as if the empire had never existed at all. Even as the factories fell silent and the empire faded from the headlines, the story refused to vanish completely. In the hands of collectors, the past lingers on, etched in the gold leaf of a cigar box lid or the curling paper of a century-old label. Auction catalogs record these artifacts trading hands for hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars, their value rising with every year that passes. Each box preserves more than just a name. It carries the colors, the slogans, the proud eagle, and the memory of a vanished ambition. In private archives and museum drawers, payroll ledgers and factory photographs offer glimpses of the world that was. The clock tower of El Reloj still stands, weathered but defiant, while the relics of the American Cigar Company wait in glass cases and dusty attics, silent witnesses that keep the empire's story alive, long after the smoke has cleared. Today, the echo of those vast cigar halls lingers in forgotten brickwork and faded labels, monuments to a vanished empire. What else now lies hidden beneath the ashes of our daily lives? Each relic unearthed whispers that even giants can vanish. Subscribe for more lost histories rediscovered.